Yuu Otosaka is a pathetic failure with a unique ability. He can possess anyone's body but with two conditions. First, he can only do it for 5 seconds, and second, he needs to look at his victims before controlling their bodies. His life, however, changes when he meets an e-girl who shows him a new magical world and helps him become an overpowered S-ranked ability user. As always, Yuu starts his day by skirt chasing around the town. For Yuu, this is the norm, as he is the unseen diddler that goes around possessing others' bodies for 5 seconds. During this time, Yuu would either uncover a girl's chamber of secrets or pick fights with those he did not like. However, this was not his greatest accomplishment, as he would truly use his powers for cheating in exams. Whenever there was a test, he would possess a nerd for 5 seconds, and upon returning back to his body, he would quickly copy those answers in his own exam sheet. This is how Yuu made his way to the top of his middle school. However, that was not the end goal, as what Yuu really wanted was to weasel his way into one of Japan's top 10 schools. But since Yuu could only possess the people he had seen, he found himself in a pickle when he realized he would not know who to possess in the entrance exam hall. Yet, being the embodiment of Lucifer himself, Yuu quickly devised a clever solution. The first phase of his plan involved altering his appearance and attending cram schools to blend in. Building on this, the second phase required him to compile a list of the top students applying to his preferred school, ensuring he had the perfect candidates lined up for possession when the time came. Days later, at the entrance ceremony, Yuu finds himself seated among the selected students for Hinamori Private High School. The announcer calls his name, asking Yuu to come forward and deliver a speech as the new student representative. As he walks up to the stage, the rest of the student body, especially the boys, look at Yuu with envy. And knowing he gets more cheeks than the toilet seat, Yuu's cockiness becomes evident in his welcoming speech. During his class, Yuu receives a text message. Sighing in disinterest, Yuu thinks about how getting texts from girls is not something out of the ordinary, since he is not only the smartest student here but he is also the Brad Pitt of this school. However, not wanting his simp to wait for him, Yuu decides to meet his fangirl so he can send her home crying. Upon arriving, Yuu meets the girl in a secluded area and asks her why she is blowing up his DMs like he is some obsessed girlfriend. In response, the girl nervously states that she just wants him to fertilize her eggs. Ticked off, Yuu rejects the girl by stating that he would rather marry his right hand than date an ogre like her. Upon facing rejection, the girl goes all emo and runs away to start her glow-up process. Yuu watches her run and smirks. After all, why would he go out with a girl that looks like a plant-eating reptile when he has heart eyes for the most popular girl in school, Yumi? Today, instead of watching Yumi like she is painted by Picasso, Yuu decides to make his move. As Yumi and her friend wait at the bus stop, Yuu waits for the perfect opportunity to strike. So when Truck Kun appears on the road, Yuu instantly realizes that he can use this as his opportunity to get into Yumi's pants. And so, he makes his move by possessing Yumi's friend and makes her run away, and then possesses the truck driver and steers the truck in Yumi's direction. Of course, right when the truck is about to hit her, Yuu returns to his body and throws Yumi on the ground, making it look like he just saved her from a major accident. As Yumi finds herself in a daze, Yuu asks her if she is okay. Yumi's friend returns to the scene shortly and snaps her back to reality by mentioning to her how Yuu just saved her from becoming a vegetable. Yuu then interjects by helping Yumi up and takes her to the nurse's office to get bandaged. When they step out, Yumi shyly tells Yuu that she wants to thank him for saving her from becoming a vending machine in another world. However, having done his diploma in Rizology, Yuu pretends to turn Yumi down by telling her how he does not want to impose himself on her. Yumi, oblivious to Yuu's deceit, insists on repaying his kindness, and eventually, Yuu agrees to going to a cafe with the school's baddie. At the pancake place, Yuu prepares to dig into the food like he is on the mission of starring in My 600 Pounds Life. However, Yumi quickly stops Yuu and shows him the cultured way of eating pancakes. Despite hating Yumi's way, Yuu praises her for being so creative with food, as he knows the best way to a girl's treasure trove is by just agreeing with her. As they're about to part ways, Yumi asks if he can meet her daily after school. Yuu agrees, thinking he has Yumi wrapped around his little finger. The following day, Yumi, being colorblind and oblivious to how much of a red flag Yuu is, texts him so they can walk home together. As Yuu receives the text, he starts laughing like a madman until he realizes that everyone can still see him. Before he can take Yumi to a back alleyway, Yuu is called to the student council office. At the student council office, Yuu comes face to face with Umura, the president of the council, holding a bunch of papers. Umura, in an authoritative tone, tells Yuu that since he topped his class, he now has to replicate the answers from his test onto the test sheet in front of him. He further explains that if Yuu fails to score above 90%, he will face expulsion, as he is under suspicion of cheating. Realizing he's like a cornered rat, Yuu sits down to attempt the test but wets his pants upon looking at the questions that are beyond his room temperature IQ. Wanting to cheat again, he possesses Umura's body, only to find out that instead of working his brain, Umura is working his third leg by looking at some raunchy pictures. Out of frustration, Yuu tears the dirty magazine before returning to his body. However, just as he snaps back into his own body, a girl with ash blonde pigtails appears next to his desk, holding a camera. She introduces herself as now from a different school and pulls out recordings of Yuu using his ability to possess people. Now caught by this newcomer, Yuu bolts from the office Naruto style but quickly realizes he's being chased by someone super fast. When Yuu stops to catch his breath, he's lifted into the air and dragged across a lake like a frog. Looking up, he finds a boy, wearing grandma's specs, staring at him. The boy introduces himself as Joji-Ru and reveals that his ability is to run like he has been just caught with a sus hard drive by the FBI, but he has yet to learn how to control it. When Yuu asks what they want with him, now appears out of nowhere and answers that he will be transferring to Ocean High School, which is a school for students with supernatural abilities. She also reveals how these superpowers are actually a disease which will eventually disappear once they all reach puberty, as now states that she has already gotten approval from his guardian. Yuu becomes upset and tries to fight now, but before he can strike her, now disappears and gives Yuu a beating which makes him remember God. Joji-Ru then explains to Yuu that now only turns invisible to the person of her choosing. For the rest of the world, she is very much visible. Now then tells Yuu that she wants him to join the student council as she believes he can help her with a lot of things. After getting beaten like a pinata, Yuu returns home, where he is greeted by his sister Ayumi. She excitedly tells him they're both going to Ocean High and that she has made omelette rice to celebrate the moment. While having dinner, Ayumi tells Yuu how she feels like they have another sibling out in the world. Of course, Yuu dismisses her by telling Ayumi that she needs to stop making imaginary friends. The following day, the siblings move to Ocean High and Ayumi excitedly jumps around her new room like she's a circus animal. Later that evening, Yuu sits Yumi down and explains that he is moving to another school and would like her to come visit. However, Yumi tells Yuu that she has a loving father and does not want to chase after a man. With that, curtly bids Yuu goodbye, leaving him in agonizing pain. The following day, Yuu gets ready for his new life. Upon seeing his reflection, Yuu thinks about how God really took his time carving him out. As he leaves, he is greeted by an excited Ayumi who once again hands him omelette rice for lunch. Annoyed by the same food every day, Yuu thinks about how Ayumi deserves to be treated like a 90 seconds housewife. Upon arriving at his new school, Yuu is welcomed by Nao and Joji-Ru. Curious about the students, Yuu asks Nao if everyone here possesses supernatural abilities, so in response, Nao reveals that most of the students are expected to develop supernatural abilities or have just shown faint signs of their possible abilities. Yuu scoffs at how rigid the rules are until Nao states how before this school all the kids with special abilities were taken to labs where they were tested on like some guinea pigs. Yuu shrugs it off, saying it cannot be that bad, prompting Nao to reveal how her older brother lost his mind because of these Scientology agents. After arriving at their destination, Yuu becomes frustrated and asks Nao why he has to join the council and help them out. Nao sternly informs Yuu that their goal as the student council is very important, as they must find people with abilities before anyone else finds them. And if they refuse to come with them, then they must intimidate them into not using their powers. However, since Nao did cockblock him, Yuu angrily asks her why he should help her. In return, Nao casually states that he can either make some money from this job or he can get hired by Taco Bell, where he will be made to clean shit stains out of the washroom walls. In the end, Yuu begrudgingly accepts Nao's proposal. Later that day, Yuu grimaces as he opens his lunchbox and finds Ayumi's nasty omelette inside. All of a sudden, Joji-Ru arrives and tells Yuu they should have lunch together in the cafeteria. Yuu glances at Nao, who had been eating alone like a loser, and asks Joji-Ru about why she is alone. Joji-Ru states they can invite Nao, but Yuu rejects the idea. The boys later arrive at the cafeteria and find it packed with Americans just waiting to pounce on food. As Yuu wonders how they will get to the food with all the students, Joji-Ru smirks and states that when there is food, there is a way. He then reveals his plan of using his superpower, which prompts Yuu to ask him how he is going to do that when they can easily get caught in HD. Joji-Ru tells Yuu that he is worried about the wrong thing because once he activates his power, he will not be able to see which sandwich he can get his hands on. With that, Joji-Ru runs towards the sandwich stall with ejaculating speed and grabs a handful of sandwiches. The sandwich lady sighs as she sees a widespread destruction caused by Joji-Ru. Later on, Yuu asks Joji-Ru why Nao eats alone. Joji-Ru proves he is a certified smartass when he speculates that everyone probably stays away from Nao because A, she is the student council president, and B, since she is visible to everyone but the person she chooses not to show herself, they find her no less than Rhea Ripley when they see her beat people in hallways. Nao then walks up to the boys and states that their collaborator is coming. Yu expresses confusion, but Jojiru just tells him to head to the student council room. As Yu does so, he is greeted by a man that looks like a human version of a wet sock. Instead of interacting with Yu and the two NPCs, the man points at the map and states that their next target has psychic photography. Shocked by the collaborators' autistic behavior, Yu asks them what the heck that was. Jojiru casually replies by stating that the collaborator has the power of identifying other ability users. Excited for the new adventure, now states that they will skip school and find their target. When they reach the school, now in a frenzy, rushes to interrogate people about supernatural stuff. Yu, on the other hand, stays back as he does not want the ladies to think he is with the weird chick. Now appears and tells Yu that she has found someone fishy and asks Yu to use his powers to look inside the person's bag. Desperate to rummage through someone else's stuff, Yu goes off with her. When they catch up with the boy, Yu possesses him and empties his backpack while now picks up the fallen photographs, which turn out to be a picture of a girl's double beef patty. Upon seeing this, they force the boy to rat out his supplier, or they'll send both Diddy and Drake without the baby oil his way. Not wanting to lose his sitting abilities, the boy reveals his supplier named Yudao. After searching the area for Yudao, they find their target at the archery club. Now confronts Yudao, who tries to play dumb and denies having a superpower. Seeing his reaction, now tells him that there is no need for him to lie as he has already been ratted out by his customer. Now cornered, Yudao tells now that he took those illicit pictures to remind the boys what their grandfathers used to die for in the wars. Right at that moment, he takes a picture of Now and warns her to stay away from him, or else he will make sure everyone knows that her panties cover her entire bottoms. Of course, Now cannot have anyone knowing that, so she distracts him with her ability and gets a hold of her photo. With her secret and dignity saved, Now tells Yudu that if he does not stop using his abilities, then she will send his entire hard drive to the FBI. This upsets Yudu so much that he directs an arrow at Now, but before he can hurt her, Jojiru rescues Now in time. Once the threat is dealt with, Now tells Yudu that if he does not stop abusing his powers, he will be taken to the Epstein Island where Stephen Hawking would both diddle and dissect him. Now scared, Yudu relents and promises to never use his superpowers. Since Yu had been curious about Nao's elder brother, Nao decides to take him to meet her brother. They take the express train since they never went to Hustle University and do not have a Bugatti. During the train ride, Nao pigs out and gives the passengers an Yu an unasked mukbang. After eating to her heart's desire, Nao reveals that his brother developed powers right when she got into a prestigious middle school. In her excitement, she tells her older brother how she is going to be the breadwinner of the family while he is just a broke rock star. In response, Kazuki just laughs and tells Nao that his future does look as dark as Uranus. He then asks Nao if she vibes with his favorite band Jean, but she tells him that she only likes nightcores. Unfortunately, Nao never got to go to her fancy school as her mother begged her and Kazuki to enroll in a boarding school. Kazuki was initially pissed, but when he saw his mother's on her knees, he realized his mother can no longer support them by using her mouth. In the end, they enrolled in the boarding school, and while Nao was surrounded by her friends, Kazuki was getting experimented on as he had the power to make the air vibrate at will. The scientist who examined him wanted Kazuki's power for themselves, and after a year of relentless experiments, Nao was finally allowed to see her brother, but of course, he was no longer the same. Kazuki barely recognized her and now quickly realized that the friends she was always surrounded by were fake friends sent by the scientists so she would always be occupied. Now had realized that she was getting examined by the scientists daily as they thought she would also develop powers, and before they could make her a mindless vegetable, Now escaped and got help by a great man. Yu tries to ask her about this man, but Now cuts him off and states they are here. Upon arriving at the hospital, Yu is startled to see Kazuki tearing away the mattress. The nurse quickly administers a sedative, and while he is stunned, Now appears to be completely used to her brother's behavior. Instead of feeling sorry for him, Now takes Kazuki outside where Yu witnesses a breathtaking view. Now then reveals that it was the great man who made sure Kazuki would be at peace till his last breath. After coming home, Yu is greeted by Ayumi, who makes vegetable soup for them. Upon taking a sip, Yu instantly shivers and asks Ayumi if she added Belle Delphine's bathwater in their food again. Ayumi smiles and enthusiastically states that what does not kill you makes you strong. The next morning, Yu wakes up and realizes Ayumi has packed the same old stinky sweet omelet rice for him. He tells her that there is no need for her to pack his lunch any longer as his taste buds have rotted thanks to her disgusting food. However, still wanting to torture her brother, Ayumi insists that he take lunch just this one day. At the school, Jojiru informs Yu that they have a limited edition chicken for lunch today at the cafeteria. Yu, however, gets depressed as he tells his friend that if it is a limited edition curry then it will run out quickly. Jojiru then reminds Yu that he's faster than an African when it comes to getting chicken. True to his words, Jojiru bolts out of the class, giving Yu a panic attack. By the time he reaches the cafeteria, Yu finds Jojiru covered in his blood. He sighs and tells Joji-ru that he should go to the doctor, but the boy wipes away the blood and tells Yuu that he will honor the chicken who died for him. As the boys gush over their food, Joji-ru gets a call from Nao. He then informs Yuu that the collaborator is coming again today, and they have to rush to the student council office. At the council office, the collaborator named Takedo enters. Curious as to why Takedo is always wet like a pair of ladies' underwear, Yuu asks Joji-ru why the collaborator is always drenched. Joji-ru then reveals that Takedo's special ability can only be activated when he is soaking wet. This makes Yuu shudder as he realizes how Takedo's balls must always be cold. Moving forward, Takedo informs the gang that their next target has the power of channeling. Since Yuu's illiterate bum has never heard of the word, he asks what channeling means. Nao speaks up, revealing that their target can communicate with the dead. Yuu is instantly amazed by this power and asks the gang if he can use the target to communicate with Genghis Khan, as he always wanted to know how a fat man like him could impregnate dozens of women. Everyone ignores Yuu as Takedo states that this target contains two powers, one being channeling and the second one is pyrokinesis. Once Takedo takes his leave, both Yuu and Joji-ru are shocked to learn that there is someone with two abilities. Nao joins the lads and points at the map, stating that their target appears to be on the move. Without wasting more time, the trio heads to an alleyway where the target was last spotted. Upon arriving, Nao quickly speculates that something sus is going on. They come across two sets of footprints, which leads Nao to believe that an adult seems to be chasing after a girl. After coming to an open road, Nao interrogates a woman who reveals that he saw the famous idol, Yusa, being chased by a man. She thought it was a movie scene, so she decided to mind her business. While Nao and Yuu try to remember who Yusa is, Joji-ru loses his cool and states that Yusa is the famous idol, and the girl he marries right before his alarm goes off in the morning. This prompts Yuu to remember that Yusa is the idol Ayumi worships religiously. All of a sudden, Nao spots a suspicious man and orders her boys to chase after him. As they reach to apprehend the man, the bastard pushes Nao, causing her to fall. Yuu quickly possesses his body and Joji-ru takes care of the rest. Nao curses as she tells the man that if her already flattened butt gets more flat, she will sell his organs to pay for a Brazilian butt lift. Terrified of the girl who is twice as short as him, the man quickly reveals that he was ordered to tail Yusa. Once the man is taken away by an ambulance, Yuu and his colleagues are greeted by a boy who asks them if they are beating up people because they want Yusa's autograph. Nao tells him they are not as crazy as Taylor Swift fans and just want to ensure the idol's safety. At first, the boy refuses to tell them Yusa's location until Nao gives him a quick demonstration of her own powers. Surprised at first, the boy scoffs and tells Nao that his father is a better invisibility user. He then leads them to a club where the gang is greeted by another boy and the idol. Seeing the girl, Joji-ru begs Yusa to let him take just one picture of her big toe. The boys, who appear to be Yusa's companions, grow disgusted and ask Nao what they want from Misa. Now confused, Nao asks if Yusa's real name is Misa. The guys are unable to answer. Nao talks to Yusa, who sweetly reveals that lately she feels as if her body is controlled by another. This has led her to believe that she needs to sacrifice 100 virgins to remove whoever is controlling her body. Nao responds in the same tone and tells Yusa that a few centuries ago, women were roasted like marshmallows for saying such a thing. Nao then asks the Yusa's companions if Misa is one of the spirits which Yusa can summon. They then reveal that Misa is Yusa's older sister who died in a car accident. Suddenly, Misa overtakes Yusa's body and starts cussing like a drunken sailor. Yuu is surprised to see such a difference in Yusa's character, as before Misa possessed her body, Yusa appeared to be a sweet summer child. Misa, in her anger, burns everything done, which leads Nao to believe that Yusa has the power of channeling the dead while Misa can use pyrokinesis. Confirms this, and after butting heads with Nao just for shits and giggles, she reveals how Yusa is being tailed by a big shot producer because she accidentally got her hands on his mobile phone, which has a video of him stacking donuts on his Johnson. After learning this, Nao tells Misa that she can help her out of the situation. That night, Misa, posing as Yusa, calls the director and his men. While the producer harasses Yusa, Misa and Yusa's friends take out the director's men, and once the plan is set in motion, Misa unleashes a fire attack while Nao gives the producer an invisible beating. Scared for his life, the producer begs for forgiveness. Misa allows him to live another day with a condition of never crossing her again. Later on, Nao tells the two boys that she has to take Yusa to her school as the streets are not safe for her anymore. Upon hearing this, the boy named Shu tells Misa how he has always loved her, but now she is quite literally going to ghost him. Misa smiles and tells Shu to get a real woman and leave the past. After a tearful goodbye, Yuu returns home, exhausted out of his mind. The next day, Yuu's bad luck starts the moment Ayumi hands him a plate of food. Yuu dies a little and thinks about how he would rather see his grandparents bang than see Ayumi's food again. However, the people pleaser in him convinces him to slurp down the food. Ayumi quickly notices his grim face and tells Yu that he has the same look when their pastor diddled him. Yu assures Ayumi that he is quite alright and heads to school before he gets diarrhea. At school, Joji-Ru gushes about how they will have Yusa in their class. Yu also observes a group of boys talking about having the idol in their school. This leads him to sigh as he thinks about how having Yusa in their class will cause a huge commotion. As Yusa enters the class, the boys break out in loud cheers while Yu remains unfazed just so a lowlife can make a Patrick Bateman Sigma edit on him. However, even his exterior melts away when Yusa politely tells her classmates to simmer down as she intends to enjoy her school years with all of them. Yusa is then asked by the teacher to sit next to Nao, who coldly greets her, which leaves their classmates to talk shit about Nao. Later that day, Yusa finds herself surrounded by a bunch of her male classmates. Some tell Yusa about how they saved multiple orphans from getting burned, while another boy tells Yusa how it was actually him who landed on the moon instead of Neil Armstrong. A fight suddenly erupts between the boys as they all seek Yusa's attention. This prompts Yusa to sing a song from Cocomelon to calm the toddlers that she finds herself surrounded with. In the meantime, Joji-Ru fangirls from afar until Nao arrives and tells them that their collaborator is here. She then drags Yusa with them, much to everyone's disappointment. In the student council room, Yusa begins to tremble upon seeing Takedo, who states their next target has telekinesis. Wanting to be cool, Joji-Ru assures Yusa that Takedo is not the big bad wolf. She thinks he is, as he is more like a wet poodle. Once Takedo leaves, Nao states their target is a student of Kanai School and an upcoming baseball player. Without further ado, the gang heads to the school, where Nao confronts the boy instantly by stating that she knows he uses telekinesis to throw his knuckleball. The boy named Arifumi plays it cool by telling Nao that she sounds like she worships the Illuminati. Annoyed by his behavior, Nao tells Arifumi how it's pointless to abuse his power, as by the time he reaches pro, he will be unable to use his power, which vanishes once he starts having wet dreams. However, when Arifumi remains stubborn, Nao challenges him to a baseball match. If her school wins, then he must do as told. Arifumi agrees and states that if his team wins, then she must keep her Pinocchio nose out of his business. With everything settled, Nao and her gang walks home when Yu asks her how she plans to win. Nao casually reveals that since nobody in the baseball team possesses powers, they will simply have to join in to outwin Arifumi. The following week, Nao and her team face Arifumi and his team. Before the match, Nao warns her teammates that if they make her lose, then she will make them paint the entire school with a nail polish brush. The game begins, and to Nao's dismay, Arifumi and his team dominate the match until Nao has enough. She gathers the student council and states that they will start playing dirty from now on, and asks her circus monkeys to use their powers. The match takes an interesting turn, which ends up in Nao and her team emerging victorious. After the match, Yu finds himself enjoying his new school, while Arifumi agrees to play fair from here on out. The next day, Yu observes as Yusa continues to get flocks of sheep flocking around her. Ticked off, he wonders why everyone is acting like Yusa does not poop the same way as them. Joji-Ru, being the biggest fanboy of the idol, tells Yu that he bets Yusa leaves tulips in the toilet bowl. All of a sudden, Yu sees Nao being surrounded by a bunch of angry girls. They drag Nao outside, making Yu so curious that he decides to follow after them. Like a coward, Yu watches from a distance as the girls deliver a beating to Nao, who silently just accepts her fate. Once they leave, Yu realizes that the girls probably beat her up because she is always beating up others. He then comes to check up on Nao, who dusts off her clothes and bluntly tells Yu that if he was so worried, he should have saved her before. Nao receives a call and she informs Yu that their collaborator is here. As they arrive at the student council office, Takedo states that their next target has the power of levitation. Nao excitedly tells the gang that the boy must be a Dua Lipa fan, and then throws a magazine on the table, stating that she had been following the story of the so-called flying man for quite some time now. As the gang sees the picture, Yu states that it appears that the boy is hiding deep in the mountains. On that note, Nao speculates that she thinks he is practicing his skills and they should apprehend him before he becomes more famous than the Kardashians. As the group complains about Nao's plan, the girl excitedly states that it's time for a camping trip into the mountains. With the plan in motion, Nao heads to the supermarket to stock up on food supplies. It also appears that Nao has taken side quests like pissing off vegans by the amount of meat she has taken into her custody. Even Yu is surprised by Nao's ability to eat so much meat. Nao, on the other hand, proudly reveals that for every cow the vegans save, she is going to eat double the cows, as she never lets her enemies win. While Yu and Nao argue, Yusa and Joji-Ru observe from afar. Yusa tells Joji-Ru how Yu and Nao look like they file their taxes together. Joji-Ru agrees and states that Yu and Nao do indeed make a cute couple, but clarifies that they are not together. Once the gang has everything they need, Nao instructs the boys to carry the camping tents, which pisses off Yu, who asks her why they have to stay in the forest for a whole night. now tells him that they need to wait for the target to come out as he appears to be hiding. After a long hike, now, being the mother of this very motherless group, instructs them to pitch a tent here. However, as Yuu and Joji-Ru work to set up the campsite, Yuu ends up falling inside a dried up well. He angrily asks why they did not warn her, to which now responds back by saying that he is both stupid and blind. After arguing like a couple madly in love, now announces that it's time for the best cookout the hood has ever seen. During the meat grilling session, pun intended, Yuu asks Yusa how she feels about Misa. The girl happily reveals that while she was a girly girl, Misa called herself one of the boys. Upon hearing this, Yuu can't help but wonder if Misa sometimes possesses Yusa. Would it technically count as a threesome if he took Yusa for a spin between the sheets? Later that night, Yuu notices Nao's absence from the campsite and goes to check on her. After venturing deeper in the woods, he finds Nao having a jam session, something which Nao does curiously. As Yuu approaches her, he asks Nao if she is listening to mumble rap, but Nao hands her headset, revealing a song from Jean. Since Yuu only jams to lowly moans, he tells Nao that he has never heard of such a band. Nao states that Jean was her brother's favorite band. This prompts Yuu to listen to the song. As he does so, he instantly finds himself teleported to a vast field. After taking out the headset, Yuu shares his experience, which makes Nao rather excited. She tells Yuu he is not like other boys as he managed to understand the depth of the song. Not wanting any die-hard Jean fan to question her love for the band, Nao tells Yuu how the lead singer of the band is blind, which is why the song was so soulful. She also tells Yuu that he can have the headset as she makes plenty by being one of the top whiffers of fat otaku boys. That night, Yuu plugs in the headset and dreams about a boy that he has seen multiple times before in his dreams. On day 2, the student council decides to have seafood. After eating, Nao shows Yusa to a crappy makeshift bath while telling the boys to go wash their filth in the river. This upsets Jijiro, who had been planning on gargling Yusa's bathwater. After crying a little, the boys head to the river, where Yuu realizes that Joji-Ru has a sleeper built. Seeing his friend's hot body, Yuu realizes he is no different than James Charles. He also tells Joji-Ru that he has a nice body. Joji-Ru looks at him all serious, which leads to Yuu telling him no homo. After washing up, the group sits together and Yuu states that he would like to return to the civilization where he has a sister to look after. Nao states that she cannot let him go, but to console him, she tells him that she is sure their target will appear tomorrow. To Yuu's surprise, the target does end up showing up on their campsite. He asks the group why they are out in the wilderness, to which Nao replies back, stating that they are all runaways and plan on staying here forever. The target, named Seidu, then tells Nao to just wait a couple more years and then throw her parents into nursing homes. However, Nao gets serious and asks the boy if he can fly around and drop shit bombs on his enemies' cars like a vengeful pigeon. Seidu tries to deny it at first, but when that trick doesn't work, he grabs Nao's camera and shoots for the sky. Seeing this, Yuu instantly possesses Seidu's body. However, when he finds himself far from the ground, he forces himself to channel Seidu's power. Luckily, Yuu manages to unlock Seidu's power and makes a less than impressive landing. While catching his breath, Joji-Ru tells Yuu that if he had fallen from the sky, then he would have had the fortune to park his car in the disabled spot. As Seidu lies on another side, Nao and the gang come to talk to him. Nao tells him to stop using his power if he doesn't want to be dissected like a frog. Seidu reluctantly agrees and Yuu finally gets to go home. Over dinner, Ayumi reveals to Yuu how a boy asked her out but she turned him down. While talking, Ayumi breaks in a fit of cough. Yuu sees this and tells her to sleep and relax. The next morning, Yuu checks in on Ayumi. As he sits beside her bed, she apologizes for not being able to make breakfast for them. Yuu, attempting to cheer her up, jokes that at least today Gordon Ramsay wouldn't be cursing her cooking from the other side of the world. He then tells Ayumi to skip school and rest for the day. Later, at school, Takedo marks a spot on the map and announces that their next target's power is collapse. However, instead of focusing on the looming threat, the four losers stare at Takedo, collectively realizing that Takedo has a second power of instantly making a girl wet. Shifting his attention back to the mark, Yuu declares that the target is located in their school's apartment complex. Nao then wonders who it could be, since only adolescents can wield superpowers and everyone is supposed to be in school. She speculates that the target might be a student who has called in sick. Hearing this, Yuu grows anxious. Nao notices Yuu's worried expression and questions him, but Yuu refuses to tell her, not wanting to trouble Ayumi while she's sick. As Nao continues to press him, Yuu reluctantly reveals that Ayumi was the one who called in sick from school. Upon hearing this, Nao states that it's not uncommon for siblings to develop abilities. Without wasting any more time, they decide to visit Ayumi. Yusa becomes excited about meeting Yu's little sister, while Yu grows nervous since Ayumi practically worships Yusa. Before heading to the apartment complex, Yusa suggests they bring something for Ayumi. Finding the idea thoughtful, Yu proposes they get her some rice pudding. And so, the group heads to a convenience store, where Now once again takes the opportunity to grab things for herself. As Yu calculates the bill, he realizes that anyone who marries Now will end up both bald and penniless. In the end, Yu makes Now pay for her items, emphasizing that he is a feminist who believes in gender equality. Upon arriving at the apartment, Yu turns to Yusa and tells her that she can't just walk in, as Ayumi might faint from excitement. Reluctantly, Yusa puts on glasses and a mask to disguise herself. However, as they walk inside, they notice 3 other pairs of shoes by the entrance. Yu opens the door to Ayumi's room and finds her surrounded by her classmates. The girls introduce themselves and explain that they came to keep Ayumi company. Once they leave, Ayumi immediately starts shipping Now and Yu together. She bombards them with embarrassing questions, asking if they have started dating, which is vehemently denied by both of them. Thankfully, Ayumi's attention soon shifts to Yusa, and upon recognizing her, she starts getting a nosebleed. Now quickly helps her stop the bleeding, but when Yusa takes off her mask, Ayumi once again becomes overwhelmed, resulting in yet another nosebleed. Yusa then approaches Ayumi and hands her some cookies. Later, all of them sit down to have dinner together. After they finish eating, Yusa receives a call from her agent. She informs the group that she needs to leave and make a dance video on TikTok to show solidarity to a trendy political movement. Meanwhile, Yu and Now wash the dishes together while Ayumi watches them, insisting that they are destined to be a couple. Without looking up, both Now and Yu respond that they'd rather go to North Korea than date each other. Later that night, Now and Yu tuck Ayumi back into bed when Ayumi mentions that she had a dream, prompting Now to inquire further. However, Yu gently stops her, suggesting they let Ayumi rest. With that, Now decides to leave, and Yu walks her to the door. Before parting, Now instructs Yu to keep a close eye on Ayumi and ensure that she stays at the apartment complex until they can gather more information about her superpower. The next morning, Yu tells Ayumi that even though she's feeling better, she still needs to stay inside. Ayumi tries to argue, but Yu firmly tells her she must not leave. During the school's lunch break, both Joji-ru and Yu receive a text from Now, asking them to meet her at the student council office. When they arrive, Now informs them that she believes Ayumi has left the apartment complex. During their conversation, Now states that she has a hunch that fate is about to deal them a cruel hand, prompting them to rush towards the school building. Meanwhile, Ayumi sneaks into the school, rushing to her class, when she is suddenly confronted by Kanishi, a girl who has a face that only a mother can love. In a chilling tone, Kanishi accuses Ayumi of stealing her lifelong crush and vows to erase her from existence. Terrified, Ayumi turns and runs, with Kanishi in close pursuit. Desperately searching for a place to hide, Ayumi tries to enter a bathroom stall but finds them all locked. Cornered and trembling, Ayumi's fear overwhelms her, and in a moment of panic, she unleashes her superpower. The entire building collapses while the 4 musketeers watch in horror as the building crumbles before their eyes. In a state of panic, Yu dashes toward the wreckage and begins frantically clearing away rubble, desperate to find his sister. As he digs through the debris, a loud creak suddenly catches his attention. Looking up, his heart skips a beat as he sees a massive boulder breaking loose and plummeting straight toward him. As Yu wakes up, bandaged and hospitalized, the first thing he does is ask about Ayumi. The doctors gently inform him that Ayumi didn't make it, and that she's gone. In that moment, Yu feels his entire world collapse around him. During the funeral ceremony, Yu remains lost in his thoughts, barely registering the words of condolence spoken to him. Upon returning to his cold, empty apartment, Yu is haunted by the silence that now surrounds him. He heads to Ayumi's room, pulling out her best photograph. With a heavy heart, Yu realizes that he is definitely the pretty one in the family. Suddenly, memories flood his mind of how Ayumi was always there for him. Overcome with guilt, Yu breaks down, crying miserably for all the moments he took for granted. As the night grows deeper and darker, Yu feels hunger gnawing at him, prompting him to go to the kitchen to find something to eat. At that moment, he starts to miss Ayumi's terrible cooking. With no other options, he rummages through the cabinets, opening them one by one in search of something edible. Then he remembers the food their uncle had sent. He grabs a few cups of ramen and starts eating, making a mess of the entire kitchen. In an attempt to numb his pain, Yu turns on the TV and zones out until a knock on the door startles him. From the peephole, he finds Joji-ru and Yusa standing there. Smiling warmly, Yusa states that she made a stew with her cream to cheer him up. However, when Yu doesn't open the door, Misa takes over Yusa's body and drops the stew. She angrily reveals how she fainted so many times while milking herself to make the creamiest stew for Yu. Joji-ru, on the other hand, cries and tells Misa that he would have sacrificed his entire family to eat that stew. Days pass by, and the floor next to the couch fills up with ramen cups. One day, Yumi walks in, but Yu does not bother to acknowledge her presence. She asks how he's been holding up, to which Yu tells her that if she is not here to give oral support, she should leave. Pointing to the pile of ramen cups scattered around, Yumi offers to clean up, but Yu just shrugs and tells Yumi that he always wanted to have a topless maid. Feeling burned out, Yumi then asks Yu to go out with her for pancakes, but he declines and asks why she is trying to be his mother. Undeterred, Yumi tells Yu that since he's not a vampire who would sparkle in sunlight, he should go out with her. This infuriates Yu, who then kicks all the ramen cups on the floor in a rage. As he yells at her, Yumi realizes that Yu doesn't want her around. After Yumi leaves, Yu tries to get more ramen from the cabinet but finds it empty. Frustrated, he decides to step outside to restock. Just as he's about to leave, he looks through the peephole and sees some men waiting outside. Realizing they have come to take him away, Yu quickly uses his ability to possess one of them and escapes the building. Once free, Yu withdraws some money and catches an express train, determined to get as far away as possible. After stepping off the train, he finds a small one-bedroom place and continues his isolated existence. He switches from ramen to pizza, eating in bulk while avoiding all human contact. As days go by, Yu eventually realizes that he hasn't been outside in a while. He pulls up his hood and ventures out, keeping his face hidden. While wandering around, he comes across some Mitarashi dango and impulsively buys a large amount. While devouring them, he watches some boys playing a video game. Intrigued, he joins in, eliminating zombies one after another. The rush of dopamine temporarily soothes him, and he soon becomes obsessed, overdosing on pizza, Mitarashi dango, and playing the zombie game endlessly. A few days later, Yu arrives at the arcade and notices a group of guys playing his favorite game. He waits patiently for them to finish, but when they don't, he calls them out, demanding a turn. They turn around and glare at him, treating him like he's beneath them. Without warning, the hoodlums drag him out of the arcade and prepare to beat him up. However, Yu swiftly possesses them one by one and uses his powers to make them hurt each other. Once they are all on the ground, he approaches one of the guys and stabs his leg with the sticks from Mitarashi dango. He then warns the guy to stay out of his way or he will send him to hell, where he will have to explain to the Romans what Hakutua means. The next day, Yu is cornered by another gang that attempts to overpower him. The gang leader, Hasoyamada, asks if Yu was the one who single-handedly took down the Gondu's gang. Proud of his achievement, Yu smirks, prompting Hasoyamada to threaten that after tonight, Yu won't forget his name. Yu scoffs and tells the guy that no girl would ever date him because of his unmoanable name. When the gang members try to launch a sneak attack, Yu possesses them one by one, making them hit each other. In the chaos, he possesses one guy who ends up stabbing Hasoyamada in the leg. Now appearing next to Hasoyamada, Yu brings the dango stick dangerously close to his eye and asks if he would like to transform into a pirate with one eye. The gang leader begs for mercy, and Yu walks away, laughing like a maniac. From hero to villain, Yu continues picking fights with various gangs. After defeating another gang, Yu notices one of the guys struggling to grab something that slipped out of his pocket. Curious, Yu picks it up and opens it, discovering Snoop Dogg's breakfast inside. Feeling accomplished, Yu rolls a joint and is about to light it when someone kicks it out of his hand. Looking up, he sees now standing in front of him. He asks her how she found him, and she casually reminds him that, as a self-proclaimed useless stalker, she used her ability to follow him. With confidence in her voice, now tells Yu that after one bite of her home-cooked meal, he would want to return to his old self. Back at her house, now cooks Yu omelet rice, which reminds him of Ayumi. For a second, he wonders if he dates now, will that make him Jaime Lannister? He shrugs away his thoughts and devours the meal. For the first time in a long while, Yu smiles, and after some thought, he decides to rejoin the student council. The next morning, Yu prepares to leave for school. However, before leaving the house, he pays a quick tribute to Ayumi's picture as if she is as handsome as Kim Jong-un. After arriving at his class, Yu is then welcomed by Joji-ru and Yusa. This ticks off her fanboys, who look at Yu with envy. Observing the lads' faces, Yu becomes uneasy, realizing that if he does not distance himself from Yusa, he will be starring as a victim in a crime documentary. Yusa also realizes the hostile environment and decides to calm the boys by singing one of her Cocomelon songs. Yu smiles as he watches all the boys, including Joji-ru, going totally crazy over a crappy nursery rhyme. During the lunch break, Joji-ru speeds off to grab lunch for the both of them. As Yu arrives in the cafeteria, he asks Joji-ru if trying to speedrun his way to an early grave is his idea of a warm welcome to school. On that note, Joji-ru tells Yu he must have been seriously deprived of love as a kid if basic decency has him so confused. As they continue eating, Joji-ru suddenly receives a text from Nao. Assuming they've been called to the student council to track down another ability user, both he and Yuu quickly rush to the council room. However, when they arrive, Takedo is nowhere in sight. Instead, Nao explains that she called them there for a different reason, to watch Yusa's new promotional video. Upon hearing this, Joji-Ru goes into full fanboy mode, running around the office in a frenzy, overwhelmed with excitement at the thought of seeing an exclusive screening of Yusa's video. You can't help but think once again how absurdly obsessed his friend is. Nao then plugs in the CD and starts playing the PV on the big screen. During the song, Nao kicks Joji-Ru away from the screen before he could lick the screen. When the song finally ends, Joji-Ru is practically drooling over the screen in awe. Meanwhile, for the first time ever, Nao offers a compliment on Yusa's performance, albeit in her typical blunt manner. She gives Yusa 10 points for vocals, 20 for the song, 20 for the wardrobe, but then subtracts 50 points for making her cringe, leaving Yusa with a grand total of 29 points. The rest of the afternoon is spent watching Yusa's PV on repeat, so Joji-Ru can look at the idol's armpits until he is sure that his brain would flash Yusa's armpits while he is dying. Fed up with the endless replays of the promotional video, Yuu turns to Nao and asks when Takedo will arrive. Nao casually informs him that Takedo won't be coming at all. Annoyed, Yuu demands to know why she called them there in the first place. In response, Nao pulls out 2 tickets to a Jin concert, revealing that she only has 2 and they need to decide who will go. Yusa, confused, asks what Jin is. Joji-Ru eagerly jumps in to answer, calling it a rock band, but Nao quickly yells at him, correcting that it's actually a post-rock band. Uninterested, Joji-Ru says he'd rather fill his ears with cement than listen to that kind of music. Yusa also declines, joking that if she wanted something that boring, she would have dated Nao's rich father. With everyone else passing on the tickets, Nao finally looks at Yuu. After some hesitation, Yuu reluctantly agrees to go with her. Later, while walking back to his apartment, Yuu notices a blind girl with long pink hair passing by. He quickly realizes that she's not from Japan and in hopes of securing a green card. He stops to talk to her when he is suddenly reminded of the vast field he envisioned when he first listened to Jin's music. Sensing his presence, the girl approaches and, in awkward Japanese, asks if he can take her to get modayaki. Yuu corrects her, explaining that it's called chicken noodle soup with a soda on the side, and then agrees to accompany her. At the restaurant, Yuu orders the noodles, and a wave of nostalgia hits him as he starts to miss Ayumi. When the waiter asks if they'd like to grill the food themselves, Yuu informs him that the girl is blind, so it would be best if the waiter does it for them. The waiter instantly recognizes Sarah, who then introduces herself as the lead vocalist of Jin. After their meal, they leave the restaurant, and sensing Yu's sadness, Sarah bluntly tells him that he sounds like a man from those Reddit stories who lose all their wealth in a nasty divorce. Yuu, feeling a bit vulnerable, admits that he recently lost his sister, Ayumi. They walk to a nearby park where Yuu opens up about how his life feels as pointless as the letter G in lasagna. Sarah, empathizing with his pain, offers to pay her respects to Ayumi. After taking Sarah to his place, Yuu watches as Sarah prays for his sister. Once that is done, Yuu excuses himself and proceeds to call Nao when he realizes how he only snaps Nao at 12 AM to send a picture of his Sir Leaks-a-Lot. As Nao picks up the call, he tells her how he is with Sarah, thinking she would be impressed. However, to Yu's dismay, Nao shrugs and tells him that she is not some BTS fan who would die to breathe the same air as their idol. As Nao cuts the call, Yuu goes inside his house and asks Sarah if she can come with him to a very special place made for special people. To Sarah's surprise, Yuu actually takes her to meet special people, aka the fancy loony bin where Kazuki is once again destroying the fluffy pillows. As Sarah learns from Yuu that this special child used to be his fan, she starts to sing a song to calm him down. Once Sarah is done singing, Kazuki becomes more stable than he was. After parting ways with the singer, Yuu gets a call from Nao who reveals that his brother seemed to recognize her, which was not the case before. She thanks Yuu, promising to meet him at the concert tomorrow. On the day of the concert, Yuu, wanting to impress Nao, tries on several outfits so he is dripping like a bad faucet. After a lot of effort, Yuu stares at his reflection and reminds himself that he has massive nuts, and that should be enough to impress Nao. Upon arriving, Yuu spots Nao and tells her that if they were in the 1800 seconds, he would have accused her of being a witch as she has completely blown him out of his mind with her beauty. Nao ignores all of that crap as she is into Arab boys with camels and oil reservoirs. Yuu licks his wounds by asking Nao why they are at the venue early. Nao then reveals that she wants to have some of the Jin merch, which prompts Yuu to tease her about how he never pegged her for a fangirl. Nao gives Yuu a bombastic side eye which shuts him up. On the way, Yuu wonders how he and Nao got so close because in the start, there was a lot of animosity between them. Just as the question pops up in his head, Yuu looks up at a Jean banner and realizes that the band brought them together. Once the concert starts, Sarah takes over the stage like a proper rock star. Yuu and Now also find themselves vibing until Yuu's head starts to pulsate. His face grows pale as he thinks about how he seems to remember the song. All of a sudden, his head starts to fill with memories that he cannot seem to understand or remember. This causes him to go berserk and eventually, Yuu ends up fainting. In a different location, Yuu is sitting in front of a computer with Ayumi by his side. He excitedly tells her how the Jean song he just listened to was epic. As the siblings stand to leave the area, Yuu notices an old man who he had seen a couple of times before. The old man tells Yuu how classical music is better and Yuu responds back by saying okay boomer. The old man named Satsumichi then asks Yuu if Ayumi happens to be his sister. When Yuu confirms, Satsumichi tells him that he feels sorry for him. After talking to the researcher, Yuu and Ayumi stand in line to get food. Yuu states how the food tastes like British food as it is laced with a lot of drugs. Ayumi, on the other hand, tells Yuu that she is happy to just have food with her bro, and wishes their elder brother could also join them. Yuu whisper yells at Ayumi, reminding her how Shun's power of time traveling is too precious for the researchers to let him roam free. While eating the food, Yuu thinks about how the researchers think he only has the power of possessing bodies, and if they were to learn about his true power, then they would lock him up like Shun. All of a sudden, Takedo sits behind Yuu's table and informs him that he managed to find someone with telepathic abilities, but he is already under the researcher's custody. Now, in order to save this person, Takedo tells Yuu to possess a boy on his right who has the power of pulverization. As Yuu does as told, Takedo then hands him a paper which contains the location of the person with telepathic powers. Before parting ways, Takedo tells Yuu they are all counting on him. Later, as both Yuu and Ayumi go under scans, Yuu thinks about how the plan to rescue his brother Shun is in motion. That day, Ayumi tells Yuu that she has been summoned by the researchers for a special round of tests. This rattles Yuu's entire existence as he begs the guards to not take away Ayumi, who wields no special powers. Of course, since Yuu is not a rich man's son, the guards tase and lock him up. Yuu later awakens and finds the entire ground shaking and wonders whose mom decided to go for a walk. The alarms start to blare, which scares Yuu. In the end, he is unable to break down the door since he is not FBI. All of a sudden, the good researcher opens Yuu's cell door. Upon seeing Satsumichi covered in injuries and blood, Yuu asks him if he talked to a girl on her periods. Satsumichi then reveals how the researchers forcibly drew Ayumi's power, which caused a massive destruction as Ayumi contains the power of collapse. Scared for his baby sis, Yuu asks Satsumichi if they will lock Ayumi up like Shun, but the doctor states that Ayumi is too dangerous, so the evil researchers plan on dissecting her and serving her to the Chinese. As Yuu becomes lost, the good researcher tells him to use his ultimate power, plunder. Yuu asks him how he knows this, but Satsumichi says, really dude, your sister is about to get hacked in a million pieces. Yuu snaps back to reality and hurries to find the boy who has telepathy. Once he locates him, Yuu possesses his body and then unleashes his second ability, plunder, which allows him to steal and use another user's power. Now with the ability of telepathy, Yuu manages to communicate with Shun, who is locked in a cell. Shun learns everything about Ayumi, but since he can only activate his power of time leaping with his eyes, he tells Yuu that he is helpless. Yuu tries to find help when a boy named Shichino walks out from a wall and tells Yuu that he is here to aid him. He tells Yuu to hurry and take his power, and once Yuu does so, Shichino is caught by the guards. Now with the ability of telepathy and phasing, Yuu quickly walks through the cell wall and frees Shun, who does his part by time traveling and altering the future. In the present, Yuu wakes up at the hospital and Now informs him that he was out cold. Yuu tells Now about how he believes he has an older brother, and suddenly Takedo walks in, telling him that he has regained his memories. Now looks at a dry Takedo and tells him that he is kinda cute when he does not look like a wet mop. Takedo ignores Now since he is not trying to be the next Leonardo DiCaprio, and tells Yuu that he will take him to meet Shun. Hearing the name, Now reveals how it was the boy named Shun who helped her get Takedo the help he needs. Without further ado, Takedo takes Yuu to meet his brother and Now decides to tag along as she likes her meat old and uncut. Arriving at Shun's hideout, Yuu is slightly hesitant to see Shun, who feels like a stranger to him. Understanding Yuu's dilemma, Shun tells him that he is ready to tell him the full story. Shun begins by revealing that in order to avoid ending up in the laboratory, he time traveled into the past. He explains that he woke up in his younger body but with the knowledge of everything that would happen in the next 3 years. Knowing the importance of Takedo in the future, Shun tackles him down and prepares to give Takedo a brotherly gobble gobble. Takedo tries to get him off as Shun states no homo and reveals how they used to be best friends. At first, Takedo thinks Shun is just trying to get into his pants, but he ends up trusting him eventually. Since Takedo has the power to suss out other ability users, he takes young Shun to a hideout where he had already formed a group of kids with abilities. Arriving at the place, Shun jokes about how they have already forged a dead poets society of their own. However, the three kids look at Shun as if he has 3 nipples. To win their trust, Shun points at Shichino and says that if he was a weird stranger, he would not know that he possesses the power of phasing through objects. Moving on, he tells the ugly girl, Medoki, that she has the power of hypnotism, and while she can make others fall asleep, she also becomes sleepy in return. Lastly, he points at Mito and states that he has the power of deleting one's memories. With this demonstration, the group finally believes Shun and agrees to listen to his plans. Shun tells them their first goal is to gather more kids with special abilities, but even after creating a whole society of kids with powers, Shun ends up failing because when the time comes, the adults apprehend them and they are unable to free themselves. This leads Shun to believe that he must seek the help of adults to fight these nasty adults. So after time traveling once more, Shun reveals the plan and Takedo states that he knows a couple of adults who will believe them and their cause as they too had powers when they were young. Shun recounts how he had to attempt this process 4 times, and by the 4th, he noticed how he was starting to lose vision. During the celebration of his 15th birthday, Shun gets an idea of raising funds to hire adults who could assist them. Takedo agrees, and they set out to gather funds. However, the researchers always manage to recruit these adults before Shun and his group could. Shun narrates that after another time travel attempt, he celebrated his 15th birthday once more. This time, he became more aware of the importance of protecting his siblings. He recalls that you had mentioned something about high school, which inspires him to create a school where he can monitor and protect kids with special abilities from being experimented on by the researchers. He calls Takedo and shares his goal to safeguard these children until they reach puberty, at which point their powers would naturally disappear. Shun also states that this will be their last attempt before he goes completely blind. After waking up from his last jump, Shun realized his eyesight had completely deteriorated. However, the determination to protect his siblings and friends became his vision as Shun and the group started working tirelessly to establish a school, and eventually they succeeded. Once the school is up and running, Shun decides to erase Ayumi and use memories as he couldn't run a school, and babysit his siblings at the same time. And so with the help of his friends, he removed Yu and Ayumi's memories. Once that was dealt with, Shun focused on building schools across Japan to protect more children. In the present, Shun tells Yu that it's time to save Ayumi now. When he tells Yu to possess him and take his power for himself, Yu becomes confused until now reveals that she and Joji-Ru always knew the true nature of his power as Takedo had told them that before they came to recruit him. Upon hearing this, Yu asks now why he was not told this before, as he could have just plundered other users' abilities instead of taking them out of it. Now reveals that they do not know what the side effects of taking everyone's powers are, so they decided to keep this a secret. Shun then joins in the conversation, telling Yu to take his power and use it to save Ayumi. Yu complies, taking away Shun's time travel ability. He then uses it to travel back to the night when Ayumi first fell ill. As Yu watches over her, he feels a mix of nostalgia and determination. The next morning, when the student council suspects someone in the apartment complex has powers, Yu gets up and suggests they check on his sister, knowing what's about to happen. Events play out as they originally did, with the suspicious girl visiting Ayumi, but this time Yu keeps a watchful eye on her. When night falls, Yu tells now that he is from the future and that his sister will die the following day. Without hesitation, now believes him and agrees to involve the student council in the plan. The next day, instead of keeping Ayumi home, Yu plunders Ayumi's power and sends her to school, and follows her while the student council members are close behind. When the time comes and the girl approaches Ayumi, Yu steps in and shoos her away and then safely escorts Ayumi out of school. As they walk, Yu spots Takedo and calls him by the nickname Shun had given him, signaling that he is now fully aware of the situation. Recognizing this, Takedo takes Yu directly to Shun. Upon arriving at Shun's facility, Yu introduces Ayumi to Shun, revealing that he is their elder brother. Ayumi is left confused, unsure of how to process this new information. Shun approaches them and begins to explain why he brought them to the facility. However, Yu interrupts, saying he already knows the reason. Yu proceeds to fill Shun in on everything he did, including the events that occurred before he time traveled. Shun finds himself impressed and praises Yu for being able to execute the task without fail. Yu smiles and asks Shun if he can come home now, but to his dismay, Shun states that none of them can go back home now. He then tells you that he has the ultimate power, which means he is more famous than Sydney Sweeney's huge talents. Shun then leads them to a research facility where Yuu recognizes Satsumiyachi from his dreams. Curious, Yuu asks why they are at the facility, and the researcher begins to explain that they are working on a vaccine to prevent people from developing the same illness that leads to superpowers. Puzzled, Yuu questions why their powers are considered an illness, and so the scientist reveals the existence of a comet named Charlotte, which passes by Earth every so often, causing a dust rain that, when inhaled, grants people special abilities. He explains that this was the same phenomenon that caused witches in ancient times to be persecuted for their powers. Upon hearing this, Yuu smiles and tells Shun they can go home once they are all vaccinated, but to his disappointment, Shun states they have a lot of work to do as the vaccines are only produced in Japan while kids in other regions still remain at risk. Yuu asks him how that is their problem, which ticks off Shun, who tells Yuu that his sharp tongue will one day get them cancelled on Twitter. Later on, Yuu and Ayumi are greeted by Shun's friends who take a liking to Ayumi, while Yuu is left out the same way you are left out in every conversation. The next day, Takedo realizes that another ability user has appeared. He tells Yuu that he is going to update Nao and Joji-Ru on the situation, and as he sits inside his car, he notices his driver, Furuki, trembling with fear. When the driver takes a wrong turn, Takedo becomes concerned and prepares to call his friends. However, before he can call for help, Furuki apologizes and states that his family is in danger, and the people who hold his family have asked him to bring him. Understanding the situation, Takedo agrees to come with Furuki. Upon reaching an abandoned warehouse, Takedo is greeted by a group of men who tell Furuki that he has one more task to perform. Once Furuki leaves, the men start to torture Takedo so he can give up all the information on other ability users. When Takedo refuses, a buff guy ends up knocking out his teeth. Not wanting to give his abductors the satisfaction of hurting him, Takedo laughs and states that he now has no teeth. Now pissed off, Takedo's abductors inject a truth serum inside Takedo, which makes him spill everything. That night, Takedo's abductors raid the school created by Shun and capture Nao. The same night, Shun receives a call informing him about how Takedo and Nao's lives are in danger, and if he wishes to save them, then he must give them Yuu. Before ending the call, the evil man warns Shun that they have been planning this for a long time, which means he cannot get out of this situation using future traveling. Out of options, Shun tells Yuu how with great power comes great responsibility, and now he must save everyone. Yuu gets mad and tells Shun that he is traumatized already and wishes a truck would hit him right now so he can get reincarnated as a slime in another world. In his state of anger, Yuu is about to trigger Ayumi's power of collapse when Shun calms him down and tells him to think about Nao. Now alone, Yuu remembers all the moments he had with Nao and realizes that Nao is the one. With this realization, Yuu heads to save Nao. However, upon arriving, Yuu is attacked by a boy who injures one of his eyes, making it impossible for him to use Time Leap now. Now angry, Yuu ends up unleashing his ability Collapse, which destroys the entire building. Shun and his friends quickly run towards the rubble and find an unconscious Yuu. Shun's friends realize that Yuu used the last of his power to save himself. This upsets Shinachi, who asks an unconscious Yuu if he only saved himself. A few seconds later, the gang ends up finding Takedo, who has sacrificed himself to save Nao from the collapse. Shun breaks down as his best friend dies in front of him and he is unable to do anything. Yuu wakes up in the hospital, his body in agony, and his mind racing as he recalls the traumatic events leading up to his fainting. Overcome with pain and terror, he screams and is about to cause another collapse when Shichino quickly administers a dose of painkillers to calm him down. As Yuu's body relaxes, he realizes he is strapped to the bed. Glancing sideways, he notices Mito and Madoki entering the room. Confused, Yuu asks what's going on and Madoki gives him the sad update on how Takedo passed away. Tsukino, barely holding back his own grief, lashes out at Yuu, blaming him for Takedo's death until his friends help him calm down. Madoki continues by telling Yuu how they had misjudged the captors, believing they wanted to exploit his time-traveling powers, when in reality, the captors wanted to rid him of his time-traveling abilities. Yuu, still processing the weight of what happened, asks about his brother Shun. With anger laced in his voice, Shichino reminds Yuu that Takedo was Shun's best friend. Now filled with guilt, Yuu suddenly recalls the overwhelming pain and despair he felt when Ayumi died. He realizes that Shun must be going through that same agony right now, mourning the loss of someone he deeply cared about. However, he quickly forgets all of that bullshit when Joji-Ru arrives with warm food. Later, Yusa comes to visit and feeds him her finger-made cream stew. Yuu smiles as he thinks about how Takedo's death helped him start a love angle with a popular idol. After a couple of days, Yuu visits his brother who is in his emo phase. Yuu tries to talk to Shun, but he cuts him off by telling him how terrorist groups are ramming up their activities to capture more ability users, and he does not know what to do now that Takedo is gone. Not wanting to be around toxic sad people, Yuu hauls his ass out of the rooftop and returns to his comfy hospital room where he is greeted by Nao. Wanting to look cool, Yuu asks Nao how she should rescue everyone, but to his misfortune, Nao gives him a solution. She tells Yuu that he can travel across the globe and plunder everyone's power if he is really serious about saving everyone. After giving it a serious thought, Yuu agrees and tells Nao how he has feelings for her. This surprises Nao, who tells Yuu that she will wait for him, and once he is back, she will greet him with open legs. Yuu quickly accepts the proposal and initiates his plan by taking away Nao's powers. He then takes Jojiru and uses power, which means Misa is also gone forever. Before leaving Japan, Yuu is visited by Nao, who gives him a small diary which states that she will be waiting for him. Upon arriving in Singapore, Yuu struggles at first but then finds his first target, a man with an ability of reading minds. After quietly sneaking into his car, Yuu quickly steals his ability and tries to communicate with the man in broken English. He reveals he is a special player with a cheat code that allows him to steal powers, but upon hearing Yuu's broken sentences, the boy's mind begins to disco dance while trying to comprehend what he is being told. Using the man's power, Yuu reads his mind, which allows him to move on to the next ability wielder. His next target, a boy named Angelo, possesses the ability of tracking those with supernatural powers. As Yuu steals his power, he realizes that everything will now be like a walk in a park since he can easily track down other ability users. After taking care of all the ability users present in Singapore, Yuu heads to South Africa and then to urban Egypt. Soon enough, Yuu becomes known as the One-Eyed Grim Reaper. However, the more Yuu consumes power, the more unhinged he becomes. One day, Yuu goes to sleep, and the next day when he wakes up, he realizes that he has gone pound town on a town. Eventually, there comes a time when Yuu forgets Nao and his memories. All that remains in his head is the promise he once made to someone dear to him. After years of plundering users of their abilities, Yuu finally rids the world with ability users. Just when he collapses with exhaustion, Shun arrives in a helicopter. The second Yuu awakens, he finds himself in a hospital with Nao by his side. When he asks who she is, Nao states that she is his girlfriend who made him promise to come back home. Hearing this, Yuu apologizes for forgetting her, but she assures him that from here on out, they'll make plenty of happy memories.